I never thought a simple trip to the airport would turn my entire life into a nightmare, but here I am, standing in the middle of a terminal that feels like it's swallowing me whole, clutching a weathered, dusty backpack that I haven't seen in years. The security officer, a man with tired eyes and a grim expression, held my gaze for a second too long before whispering those words that shattered my reality. "Sir, your son boarded the 5 a.m. flight alone. And he left this bag behind for you." My breath hitched, my heart hammered against my ribs, and suddenly the bustling noise of the airport faded into a dull, agonizing hum. My son, a boy who shouldn't have even been able to travel, a boy I thought was safe in his room just miles away, had somehow bypassed every safeguard and vanished into the sky, leaving me with nothing but this heavy, mysterious bag. I felt the cold sweat prickle on the back of my neck as I stared at the zipper, terrified of what secrets lay inside that might change everything I knew about my own child. Was I wrong for ignoring the subtle signs he was leaving? Or was I just a parent who trusted too much? Tell me, if you were in my shoes and someone handed you the belongings of a child who was supposed to be at home, would you have opened that bag right there in the terminal, or would you have run to the gate in a blind panic? It all started as a completely normal Tuesday, or at least that's what I told myself at the time. My son, Leo, had been acting a little distant lately, but I chalked it up to the typical teenage angst that everyone goes through. He was 17, bright, studious, and generally the kind of kid who never gave me a moment's worry. He spent most of his time in his room, claiming he was busy with online courses and coding projects. And I respected his privacy because that's how I was raised. I worked long hours as a consultant, often leaving early and returning late, so our interactions were usually limited to quick dinners or brief chats in the kitchen. Looking back now, the silence in the house should have been a red flag. I remember hearing a soft rustling at 4 in the morning, but I assumed it was just the house settling or perhaps Leo grabbing a glass of water. I rolled over, pulled the covers tighter, and drifted back into a restless sleep. When my alarm went off at 7, I knocked on his door to wake him for school, but there was no answer. I thought he had just left early for an exam or a study group, which he had done before. I didn't think twice about it until I got the call from the airline. See, I had actually been at the airport for a business trip, heading to a regional conference, when the security personnel pulled me aside, looking frantic. They had checked the passenger manifest after a flight crew member noticed an unaccompanied minor behaving strangely at the boarding gate. They said he looked nervous, kept looking over his shoulder, and spoke to no one. They didn't stop him because he had a valid ticket and a passport, but the bag was left under the seat in the gate waiting area, labeled with a note that had my name written on it in his jagged, familiar handwriting. The terror that gripped me in that moment was visceral. It wasn't just fear. It was the realization that I didn't actually know my own son. I had been living with a stranger who was living a life I couldn't even fathom. I remember driving back from the airport, my hands shaking so violently on the steering wheel that I nearly veered off the road twice. The bag was sitting on the passenger seat, mocking me with its presence. I didn't open it on the highway. I couldn't. I needed to get home, to his room, to find some shred of evidence that would explain why he had boarded a plane to a city 3 states away without a single word to me. When I finally reached our house, it felt different, cold, hollow, and hauntingly quiet. I walked into his bedroom, and the first thing I noticed was the smell of ozone and burnt electronics. His desk was stripped clean of his computers, his monitors were gone, and the closet was half empty. It looked like he had been planning this for months, meticulously clearing out his existence from the life we had shared. There was a ledger on the bed, a physical notebook filled with dates, locations, and bank account numbers that I didn't recognize. My stomach turned. Had he been running away from something? Or was he running towards something dangerous? I looked at the bag again, the one the official had given me, and realized this was the key to the entire mystery. I sat on the edge of his bed, the weight of the situation pressing down on my chest like a physical stone, and reached for the zipper. The silence in the room was deafening, amplified by the ticking of the clock on the wall, which seemed to mock the wasted time I had spent believing everything was fine. I felt a surge of anger mixed with a crushing sadness. Why didn't he talk to me? Was I that unapproachable? Did he really feel so isolated in his own home that he chose an airport terminal and a flight to nowhere over sitting down at the dinner table and telling me his problems? So that is the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. I had a bag that held the contents of my son's secret life. And I knew that whatever I found inside would fundamentally change our relationship, if we even had one left to save. I was standing at a crossroads of parental failure and the desperate need for truth. Before I tell you what happened when I finally pulled that zipper open, and what I found inside that led to the craziest revelation of my life, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have called the police immediately? Or would you have searched the bag yourself, terrified of what secrets you might unearth about the person you thought you knew best? Think about it. The stakes are high, and the truth is often more painful than the mystery. I'm waiting to hear your thoughts, because honestly, I still struggle with whether I handled this the right way, or if I made a mistake that destroyed any hope of reconciliation. I took a deep, shaky breath, closed my eyes for a fleeting second to brace myself, and slid the zipper open. The bag wasn't filled with clothes or typical teenage essentials. Instead, it was packed with stacks of cash, a burner phone, and a collection of encrypted hard drives. At the very bottom, there was a handwritten letter. I pulled it out, my hands trembling. It read, "Dad, if you're reading this, you've finally realized that the version of me you saw at the breakfast table was just a hologram. A projection I put up to keep you from digging into the life I really had. I'm not running away. I'm escaping a system that you helped build. You think you're a consultant, that your work is harmless, but the companies you work for are the ones tracking everyone, including me. I found the documents on your work server, the ones you thought were secured, and I saw what you were really doing. I'm not going to be another cog in the machine. I've taken the money from the accounts I accessed, money they shouldn't have had, and I'm gone. Don't look for me. I've already crossed the line you told me never to cross, and I'm finally free." Reading those words felt like a punch to the gut. The realization hit me with the force of a freight train. My own son hadn't just run away. He had hacked my firm, exposed my secrets, and stolen from the very clients I had spent my career protecting. The confrontation that followed was not a physical one, but a digital war. I spent the next 48 hours frantically trying to track him, to prevent him from doing something even more catastrophic, while simultaneously trying to hide the extent of his actions from my employers. It was the most stressful time of my life. I had to choose between protecting my son and saving my own career. And in that moment, I realized that I had already lost both. I eventually tracked him to a small apartment in a city halfway across the country. I didn't call the police. I just showed up. I walked through the door and found him sitting in front of a setup that made my professional equipment look like a child's toy. He didn't even look surprised when I walked in. He just kept typing. We didn't scream. We didn't cry. We just stared at each other, the distance between us wider than the miles we had traveled. I begged him to come home, to fix what he had broken, but he just shook his head and said that the version of me he knew was the one who taught him how to be a critical thinker, and he was just following my own lessons to their logical conclusion. I left him there. I couldn't bring him back. I had to go back to my life, face the investigation, and deal with the fallout of his exposure of my company's illegal practices. It cost me everything, my job, my reputation, and my marriage, but it was the beginning of a different kind of relationship. We talk now through encrypted channels, and for the first time, we are actually honest with each other. It's a bitter, complicated, and messy reality, but it's real. The moral of this story isn't about technology or hacking or even family secrets. It's about the dangerous gap that exists between what we believe about our loved ones and who they actually are. I thought I was a good father, but I was just a busy one, and in my busyness, I left enough space for a secret life to grow. We often think we know the people closest to us because we see them every day, but seeing isn't the same as understanding, and proximity isn't the same as connection. If you are a parent, or if you have someone in your life you think you know, take the time to really see them, not just the image they project for your convenience. Ask the hard questions before they turn into flight paths and backpacks left in airport terminals. I truly hope you never have to experience the cold, hollow silence of a house where your child used to be, and I hope you never find a letter that forces you to re-examine your entire moral compass. If this story touched you, or if you've ever had a moment where a loved one surprised you in a way that changed your life, please like this video if you were on my side in this search for the truth. and subscribe for more stories that dig deep into the messy, complicated, and sometimes shocking reality of human relationships. Share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below, and let me know. Did I do the right thing by letting him go? Or should I have brought him home by force? I'm looking forward to reading your perspectives, and I'll see you all in the next story.